Good evening, everyone. This is our May 15th meeting here that we're going to have a public hearing. We have obviously a couple items on our agenda as well. First, we'll have our roll call if we could start a meeting.
Yes.
Here.
Here.
Present.
Great. Our next item on our agenda is our citizens' time. This is an opportunity that, other than the public hearing comments, that the citizens can address the council. And then we'll have our separate public hearing for each of the two items on there. So at this time, I'll open it up to anyone that just wants to speak as a citizen. And there's a sign-up sheet, and if you could state your name and address as well when you get up to the podium to speak on citizens' time. Can we make sure her mic's on?
Mic's not on.
Well, thank you.
Shame on you.
The one thing that I wanted to mention tonight, other than to say, I still trust you, is that there was a situation mentioned at the last town meeting where there were excessive automobiles at one property, and I wanted to make a comment that because I've sold property, garages with tons of automobiles, and have had people get rezoning for that use, and was involved in that process, and have site plans for such in my tea room at home, that it's customary for the local jurisdiction to require a screening in the form of fencing and trees. So that was the only comment that I wanted to make the other night that I didn't get to. I had no question.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else for citizens' time? All right, we'll go ahead and close citizens' time. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Weir, you're here for citizens' time on this?
Evening, Bob Weir, 6853 St. Paul Drive. Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. March 25th, 1775, St. John's Church, Patrick Henry, was the least treasonous of his public speeches. I've lived 50 years within the confines of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I am a proud Virginian. I'm proud of the Commonwealth's history. I'm proud of the Commonwealth's legacy, particularly that as regards our founding fathers, Patrick Henry in particular. Little known bit of history with regard to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, and particularly the First Amendment, largely came about as a result of Patrick Henry's dissatisfaction with the Constitution, fear that the federal government would have too much power, and he was literally the driving force behind the First Amendment that protects our rights to free speech. Here in the Commonwealth, the courts have held variously that speech on matters of public concern is entitled to special protection, and one of its functions is to invite dispute, induce unrest, induce dissatisfaction, even stir some to anger. Whether you as a body feel insulted or in some way dishonored by somebody speaking up here, you don't get to do anything about it. You don't get to interfere. Because that type of interference, at least in the minds of the court, would be the most egregious form of discrimination. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weir. Any other comments for citizens' time? All right, we're going to go ahead and, if no objection, I'm going to open up the public hearing for Chapter 58 of the Town Code, Zoning Ordinance and Zoning Map. This will be we're going to have two public hearings, so this will be opening up for just this specific one. We're going to have a presentation to kind of tell us where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going to go. So on this, I'm going to let Mr. Coffey, Darren, kind of maybe give a brief introduction since we have a lot of new faces out there, and maybe you can kind of just give a little brief background of the history. I think from the Planning Commission stand, this is probably 2 years in the making of just getting it to this point. But go ahead, I'll let you speak, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's my honor to be here this evening to present this draft zoning ordinance for your consideration. The Planning Commission had their public hearing, and this is the culmination of a couple years' worth of work. I think it was toward the end of 2014, the town hired us to do a land use evaluation of the three primary tools: comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision ordinance. And top priorities, well, they're all three high priorities, but the regulatory devices are the subdivision and zoning ordinance. And so we've been working diligently with town staff over past year plus to update those tools. So I wanted to take just a few minutes this evening to go over some of the highlights of what we did. First thing that we did as part of that evaluation was a diagnostic, as I mentioned, of all of the tools. And we used the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance diagnostic to basically make sure that, it was in compliance with state code, which there were sections that were not, that were dated. We also worked with town staff to find out what worked and what didn't work with the zoning ordinance primarily, but also the subdivision ordinance. It's very important to not replace wholesale your ordinance. You know, there are always things that work fine, and you don't want to just throw that out because of some other things don't work so fine. So doing that assessment was very beneficial, and out of that, we were able to reevaluate each of the zoning districts, look at expanding definitions, creating use and design standards for certain uses, which I'll talk more about in a minute, and then adding the subdivision ordinance actually into the zoning ordinance, which makes it a more streamlined, easy-to-use document both for staff and for citizens in the development community. So Article 20 of the ordinance is now the subdivision component. The uses were a big section. We wanted to evaluate each of the uses. The uses have descriptions in the current ordinance that are pretty lengthy. Not all uses have definitions. So we wanted to make sure that we had different use types, use categories. So, for example, residential, civic, commercial, industrial. And then in each of those use types, you have different uses. And each use has a definition. We've always been told in the profession that if you do have to go to court over something, you want to be arguing over the definition that's in your ordinance and not the one that the judge gives you. So it's very important that we try to be clear and also relevant. So economic development is one of the important things to the town, and we wanted to make sure that we had use categories that were broader than what we've had in the past, and that and they're explained through the definitions. This matrix that you see acts as a window into the ordinance. It's another tool that we like to use for a quick, easy reference for, again, citizens, the development community, whatever the customers of the town might be. So if a question comes up and somebody calls in and says, hey, can we do such and such, not only can you find the answer more easily, but you can also say, hey, if you go online and look this up, you can look at it with me and I'll teach you how to use it. And then, especially if it's a realtor or a profession that deals with land use, that tool can become their best friend. One of the other things that we did when we were looking at uses, the town created a number of years ago a transitional commercial district. They've never applied it to the map, still not applied to the zoning map, but it was kind of there and wasn't real strong. And so we took a really hard look at that and have made it more robust and made it function more as a transitional commercial district. All of the districts we looked at and said, what's the intent of that district? Does it make sense? And then let's make sure that the uses and district standards and all of that follow the intent of the district. Again, I mentioned definitions. We conducted a thorough review. We added numerous terms. You want your ordinance to be clear. We revised definitions as necessary, and we also added some figures in just to kind of illustrate, how do you measure sign area? What are these different lot types? What's a setback? What's a front setback? What are the different housing types? How do you differentiate that? And picture's worth 1,000 words. So we didn't do overkill with it, but where we felt it's appropriate, where there are a lot of times a lot of questions and inquiries, we felt illustrations would be helpful. A number of years ago, the town paid another consultant to update its sign ordinance, and they did a very good job with it. As part of that, though, as part of this update, we did review it. I contacted that consultant and asked him with the Reed case at the time where he was at with this, and he said, it was pretty fresh and new, and take another look at it. So we made a couple of tweaks just to make sure that the ordinance is content neutral. And because that's a no-no these days if it's not. You can regulate size, shape, structural composition, and location of signs, and we still do that. So no major changes to the signs, but that is a major component of a lot of zoning ordinances that is not currently up to date, and yours is. The landscaping section of the ordinance, we also took a special look at. We added some illustrations. Landscaping is important as long as you don't overdo it. It's important how new development looks, and that's good for economic development too. You have an attractive town, and you want to continue to enhance it, and have new development make it even more attractive. And so, preserving and enhancing the aesthetic of the town, protecting the natural environment, helping with erosion sediment control and other low-impact development kind of techniques. Are something that we wanted to look at, and so we've got a more robust landscape section of the ordinance. The use and design standards section, this is a new section. The town, for whatever reason, controlled a lot of things through the use permit process, and so rather than having to go through public hearing to get approval for some things, we said, hey, let's just develop some performance measures, some use and design standards that set forth, how the town wants it to look and where they've been approving CUPs or SUPs, have it be by right, but under those conditions. And so, again, that's another economic development tool where if things are being approved anyway, then why not save some of your time and some of the developer's time and money and just make it by right. It doesn't mean they can just do it. They have to do a site plan. They have to follow all of the rules that are in the ordinance. But if they do that, then the use is permitted. And so that's a new section that I think will help achieve a lot of the town's economic development goals that were more difficult in the past. Exterior lighting was another issue. Dark sky lighting is what most communities are going to. We've got some illustrations in the ordinance for that. You want fully cut off shielded light that stays on the property. You don't want it going up into the sky and adding to light pollution. And it also helps aid in security. So there is a new section dealing with lighting. As part of the public hearing, some zoning map changes were proposed. The Planning Commission did forward some changes for your consideration this evening. This is the new zoning map as recommended by the Planning Commission to you. And it's taking, this is the new one, this is the existing one. So one thing I'll point out is that we tried to use some more traditional colors on the new zoning map. Red is commercial, yellow is residential, gray is industrial. That's a little bit more traditional than that, which is nothing is residential, pink is commercial, et cetera, et cetera. To me, on a zoning map, nothing means it doesn't have zoning. So we changed that to make it a little more, hopefully, aesthetic and closer to the traditional land use classifications. This map is showing what has proposed to change. And in every case, I think it's dealing with commercial, and you're dealing with, on Main Street, you're dealing with industrial, let's let's see if I can get.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you could kind of go real in detail there, Darren, about what exactly we're looking at here.
This is industrial to commercial, because it is commercial by and large. There is one industrial use that we're aware of. Otherwise, it's commercial. This is,
Darren,
Yeah, can we maybe get your mic right there beside you?
not only that, but come on, I don't think
The
the
other side?
residents can see.
There you go.
currently industrial with two B1 parcels. I think those are the two. So the recommendation is that they be B2. These, I believe, are residential. It's being proposed for B1. And then I think these are, I forget what those are. Let me look at it real quick.
So for whatever reason, like for Food Line and that shopping center, they still have that as industrial. So it's never been changed and Food Line's been here for ever, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other, I think, are commercial to a different commercial classification. So I think the Planning Commission, most of the discussion was about these. The future land use map, like the rest of the comprehensive plan, is a bit dated. The future land use map was amended in January of 2016, and these parcels were shown as transitional commercial instead of residential. It doesn't change the zoning, it just changes the future land use classification. So what's being proposed by the Planning Commission, there are little variations. This is still shown as industrial, and this is transitional commercial, and some of this is transitional commercial. So the recommendation that the Planning Commission doesn't line up one-to-one with the future land use map, but that's one of the considerations in the comprehensive plan. Yeah, I think the ones on the north are residential to commercial. So the comprehensive plan, taken as a whole, is what should be considered. The future land use is one component. It's an important component. But there's an economic development chapter. There's a land use chapter. And I think what should be bared in mind is whenever you have a zoning ordinance update and you haven't had a comprehensive plan update in a while, the zoning ordinance is going to leap ahead. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that you should ignore the comprehensive plan. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take another look at the future land use map and align it as close as possible to the zoning map. But those are guides. Those are policy guides. And the Planning Commission, and I wasn't here for that public hearing, so I don't know what the rationale was, but the Planning Commission has said that this is their recommendation. Industrial on Main Street, fronting it, to me, that doesn't make as much sense as commercial. So that is what is before you, and that is the presentation that I have prepared. I'd be happy to answer any questions now or after the public hearing.
I think probably we'll entertain questions, and this will be questions specifically to Darren that will be helping him clarify what he just presented. This is not going to be, what we're going to do is after we do this clarification questions for Darren, then we're going to open it up to public hearing comments that then we'll be able to voice your concerns. But so just for clarification questions, is there anybody that would like to address Darren or speak to him? If so, if we can just get you up to the mic so that way everyone can hear.
Do you want me to say who I am again? Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street. First question, what areas were we not in compliance with the state code?
If, there again, you might not know the answers to these.
Yeah,
so
the zoning ordinance diagnostic was done 2 years ago. So, one of the things was where the code referenced 15.1, it's now 15.2. So it's small things like that. But then there are also penalty clauses, there are procedural clauses, there are options that you don't have to do, but that you could do. So we looked at all of that. So I can't remember specifically what was not in compliance, but the new ordinance is.
Okay.
Okay. You mentioned each of the zoning districts, residential, civic. Can you show me on the map where you're specifying? And while you're there, explain the transitional. I want to go on the record as saying I am opposed to the term transitional. Doesn't make an ounce of sense in a half a square mile. Either we are or we aren't developing our main artery, either industrial B1 or B2, except for,
Let's let him answer the questions there, and then we'll,
Yeah. all right. That's why I'm asking these
Right.
questions.
So the use matrix divides the uses that are permitted into different categories. So you have civic, you have residential, commercial.
Civic meaning where the
industrial.
town's
So-
offices are?
Churches, government, yes, correct. So you have different civic uses.
Okay.
Uh,
So the church across the street from me would be civic, and I would be something else on the
Right,
other
but
side.
those are use types. Those aren't zoning designations. So
Okay,
there's a
but
difference.
you used the term zoning district. That's where
Yeah.
I got it from your own mouth.
Yes.
Okay.
So there are different zoning districts, and each zoning district allows all of the use types typically, or some of the use types, and then there are uses within the use types. So a residential zoning district, for example, would typically allow for civic uses. It would allow for residential uses. A residential zoning district would allow for very, very limited commercial uses. It would not allow for any industrial uses, probably. Whereas a commercial district is going to allow for maybe some light industrial uses, maybe not any residential uses unless it's above the ground floor. So zoning districts have a purpose and an intent, and they will allow different use types, which have different uses within the use types by the district. And so, for example, to get to your second question, the transitional commercial zoning district, the intent of that district is, the primary purpose of this district is to create a low-intensity office, commercial, and mixed-use area as a transition between residential and commercial areas. The uses in the district should buffer residential areas from the commercial core by minimizing traffic, lighting, and hours of operation, by establishing buffers, and by establishing other site-specific development standards to minimize the impact on adjacent residential uses. To enhance its compatibility with its residential surroundings, any development should be located in existing buildings wherever possible. Adaptive reuse of existing structures is to be encouraged if impacts are mitigated. And so the idea behind the transitional commercial district is, instead of having B2, which is the most intensive commercial, right up against residential, that you could have a lesser intense, more neighborhood-oriented district, commercial district, or even a mixed-use district, a mixture of residential and commercial, adjacent to residential, or acting as somewhat of a zoning buffer in between the more intensive industrial and commercial uses and the less intensive residential uses.
That makes good sense to me, but my reason for questioning that is that when people call the town hall and people ask them how, what can be done on a certain property, and as a realtor, it's important to me for a direct answer. They say, if your property is not part of the town center, then we're not interested in it. So I don't understand why 2 blocks have been singled out as being town center, and the next block and a half or 2 blocks is transitional when we're only half a square mile. Just help me to understand it.
Well, should I respond to that? I didn't have anything to do with what was recommended where and how.
These would be just.
I just need him to explain the whole transitional
So-
thing. I don't understand why we're having it.
So the transitional commercial district was on the books. We reevaluated it and tried to
Only
retool it.
recently, though.
Well, before I got here. So
I won't hold that against you.
our task was to retool it and try to make it more relevant. It has not been applied to the zoning map as yet. It is shown on the future land use map. We did early on discuss with the Planning Commission that this process could be an opportunity to match the zoning map to the future land use map. That has not happened. Was not the recommendation of the Planning Commission. And my recommendation is that, you look at the comprehensive plan at some point in the near future and look at the future land use map after, you do what you desire to do with the zoning ordinance and the zoning map. It's chicken and egg. Something's got to go first.
Right. All right. Any other questions regarding his presentation? Or his-
Question about housing, different housing types.
Single-family attached, single-family detached, multifamily.
Okay, all right, that helps me there. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an ARB issue. 3, you said a judge, if you had to go to court, you would be expected to argue over your ordinance, not one the judge gave you. So my question is, if we're coming into state code, what argument would we have over our ordinance?
State code does provide some definitions for a limited number of uses, and in those cases, we use the same definition. But otherwise, there's a wide range of definitions that can be used for different uses. And so we just use the ones that we feel are the most prudent and common. And whatever's in the ordinance is what you're talking about when you have to go to court.
Okay, and one of the most valuable ones to me is that the state protects your property rights and your zoning, so we're still safe there.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I don't know if you know this, well, you said you spoke to him. What consultant actually did our sign ordinance?
Hurd Planning, I think, was the firm. It was either them or the team, but Milt Hurd is who I spoke to.
Milt? Hurd, H-E-R-D?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And he did a great job on it.
And you recently made some more changes to it?
We just made some tweaks. There were a couple of sign types that, in our opinion, were not content neutral, so we eliminated those sign types. And
You didn't take away any of our rights to political signs or real estate signs?
well, they're not called that because that is content-based. But no, you're still allowed to have those. In a lot of cases, political signs are easier to have now than they used to be.
Oh,
But
that
we don't
sounds-
call them that anymore because that, by definition, is content. So that's a no-no.
We-
but
In
yes.
other words, we haven't lost any rights
Oh,
on
no.
the sign
You go
ordinance.
ahead and put the for sale sign up. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our presenter? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and open our mic to our public hearing. And just for some clarification and some for, just to reiterate, as you come up to the mic, just there again, your name and address, and hopefully you've already signed in. If not, please sign in. And just some basic etiquette, you'll be addressing me, the speaker, the chair, and in a public hearing, it's not usually a typical dialogue, a question and answer like we had the opportunity to ask our specific presentation there. So we want to hear your comments, be respectful, and now's the time that we're going to entertain those. So.
Bob Weir, 6853 St. Paul Drive. Curious, I'm now hearing that the driver behind this is economic development. I shouldn't have to remind anybody that economic development is how we ended up with Amazon and power lines, because we left it in the hands of the economic development professionals. In looking at the packet, it's really unclear what you're doing or what you're asking for, because everything seems to be conflated. I reviewed the packet, and I would honestly suggest, apart from my problems with some of the text, that the packet itself is fatally flawed in any number of ways. While this council has the authority and the power to enact virtually everything within the packet, you are required to comport with the process that's delineated in the state code, and you have not done that, at least not with regard to the entirety of the package. And I would suggest that the entirety of the package be returned to the Planning Commission so that you can correct your procedural errors so that it's not open to challenge or void on its face. I've got a bunch of written comments, and I'll leave them for you. I'll just briefly sort of give you the highlights to get you a sense of what's going on here. Let's start with the public hearing notice. It doesn't identify specifically, quote unquote, those properties fronting Washington Street from Route 15 to Fayette Street, not already B2, that are rezoned to B2 commercial. You are required to identify those properties by state code. Second, the zoning map is not part of the zoning ordinance. It's rather a component of the long-range land use plan, and as such requires the initiation of a comprehensive plan amendment. To my knowledge, no initiation of that comp plan amendment has been made. That's required by 15.2.2233 of the Code of Virginia. And by the way, where is your attorney? There's no notice of the properties or identification thereof in the southwest portion of the town being rezoned or remapped from C1 conservation to I1 limited industrial. On information and belief, the rezonings weren't properly noticed to adjoining property owners or HOAs in accordance with 15.22204 of the Code of Virginia. The hearing notice does not adequately notice, among other amendments, the increase of the building height limitations in the B1 district from 35 to 50 feet. It is not enough to provide information that will merely direct readers to the physical location of the actual text of the proposed amendments. You're required to put a summary in there and have something more than just a note telling us where to go research it for ourselves. There's no red line version of the amendment, so we kind of have to figure it out by going back and forth. The planning map itself, you eliminate all of the transitional commercial properties, yet the zoning text noting the purpose of the TC district remains in the zoning chapter. Further, such significant changes to the planning map require coordination with the Department of Transportation and a submission of the plan for its review and comment per 15.22222.1 of the Code of Virginia. No such submission, review, or comments are noted in your reports. Such changes also require notification of Prince William County per 15.22204 of the Code of Virginia. Upon information and belief, no notice was provided. Such changes to the existing C1 district, which lies directly within the designated route of an electric transmission line of 150 kV or more, requires notification of the electric utility, namely Dominion, per 15.22204. Upon information and belief, no such notice was provided. And last, these proposed changes will create non-conforming uses within the town. The rezonings generally. There's no record provided of any resolution by the Town Council or the Planning Commission to initiate any or all of the proposed rezonings. You started a revision of the town ordinances, but not a rezoning. Those resolutions are required by state statute, 5842 of the town ordinances and 15.22286 of the Code of Virginia. You cannot rezone without those initiations. There's no record of agreements to issue tax credits to those properties being downzoned. Tax credits in exchange for the excess real estate taxes paid during the period of higher zoning classification. The initiation of these rezonings requires coordination with DOT. The proposed rezoning, I'm repeating myself. The proposed rezonings contain no description of the public necessity, impact on general welfare, or manner of good zoning practice as required by both the Town Code and the Code of Virginia. The proposed rezonings contain no description of the consistency with the comp plan and, in fact, are inconsistent with the comp plan. Or the impact of the services provided by the town or the character or the needs of the community, again, as required by both the town ordinances and the town code. The town-initiated rezonings of 14841, 845, 851, and 871 Washington Street. The initiation of these rezonings, even though it's flawed, by the town relieves the property owner of all costs borne by every other person that sought a rezoning in this town. Pace West paid for it. Doggy Daytime paid for it. The Fairgrounds property paid for it. The initiation of those rezonings precludes the proffering out of any uses that people might find offensive. Breweries, hotels, restaurants. The initiation of those rezonings entitles the property owner to all by right provisions of B1 and precludes negotiations of things like building height and any other negotiated aspect of those particular parcels that you'd like to engage in. The town initiated rezoning of the C1 properties to I1. Again, the rezoning wasn't properly considered and forwarded, and as a matter of fact, has been tabled by the Planning Commission. So you can't even consider that. And since it's part of the map, you can't consider the map. In this particular instance, the purpose of the rezoning appears to serve the private interest of one property owner, not the welfare of the town, and quite frankly, is almost the definition of spot zoning. With regard to the B1 parcels being converted to B2, to my knowledge, the rezonings were not properly noticed to all affected parties, and that's not just the parties that own the properties. There's no discussion of the tax implications, both for the businesses and for the town. There's no discussion or report on the impact on the real property valuation. What are their taxes going to be? What is their resale value? How is that going to be impacted? And there's no discussion of what, if any, and quite likely, a reduction in allowable future uses or the impact on future uses as a result of the rezoning. And again, the rezonings are incompatible with the adopted comp plan. And last but not least, the zoning ordinance amendments themselves. I haven't had a chance to do a word by word, but I sort of ran through them, and a couple of them really jump out to me. First and foremost, the revisions remove the approval and appeal authority from the town council, those elected officials most directly responsible to the residents, and places it solely in the purview of the unelected members of the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. In a town as small as this, where you are supposed to be close to the residents in your governance, abdicating that responsibility is just unfathomable, and placing it in the hands of those who don't have to respond to the residents. And then the last thing, and I'll give you an example. The increase in the height regulations for the B1 district from 35 feet to 50 feet appears to be an example of spot zoning drafted to satisfy the desires of one landowner. The increase to 50 feet does not adequately address what the impact of that will be in the rest of the B1 districts in the town. The massing of similar structures, parking, impact on neighboring properties. In some cases, you'll have residences directly behind them and within, less than 100 feet of a 5-story building potentially. You really need to look at this stuff over. You really need to send it back, and it really needs to be done properly and within the scheme of the code, or I'm relatively certain it will fail on its face and be declared void. And I truly wish the attorney were here this evening, because I wish he would give you counsel on how to act. But I'll drop off my comments.
Thank you for your comment. All right. Anybody else would like to address on this public hearing?
Hi, Rebecca Bear, 14977 Cheyenne Way. The first comment that came to mind when I was reviewing all this was, are you kidding me? I'm not going to harp on the numerous procedural errors throughout this process. I think Bob covered all of them. My major concerns, the additional height allowance for construction should only be considered on the other end of 55, not near our town park and the residential properties. This just seems to be common sense looking at the landscape of our town. Now, I'm not against any type of commercial uses on those properties, but it needs to be done within the landscape of our town. My other major concern throughout this is that a member of this council has advertised office condos that have not been approved through the town's legal process. And seeing residential properties that have not yet been rezoned advertised as commercial, it does give the appearance to the public that some type of deal has already been made. With that alone, I do not see how at this time this council can even consider approval of this without appearing complicit. So please, start this over, get it done right, follow the procedures. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Who else would like to speak?
It's all your fault. I have to be a jack in the box, so I apologize, but I'm following procedures better than I did the last time. Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street. I understand a little better from the explanation. But I just want to make it clear that I would not be supportive of any changes that continue the transitional district. I don't see the purpose of it for 3 properties totaling 2 acres of land. It just doesn't make sense. I would like to see that totally go away, and I think it's totally safe. I don't mind staying B1. I have one more question. Do I ask you or him?
Is it a question about his presentation and that he
Yes.
was defined? I'll go ahead and let me make sure that it's okay. Make sure we have agreement with the
The
dais. that it's okay.
B1 district
Okay.
total height is what? The B1 district, is that changing, or only B2 district is changing?
Both are changing.
They both are going to 50 feet.
Yes.
Okay. My comment to that
Yes.
Thank you very much. My comment to that in respect to the difference in what it is already, the residential homes around me are already 3 stories. They're their basement, 2 stories, and then another story that is vacant that is actually dormers and holds their, but it's taking up the space of a 3+4 floor property. So it isn't any different than these very large residential homes that are around us already. The future land use, I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but I would like the map to finally be finished. I want it to show what my zoning was when I bought it 17 years ago. I see it on the little, pretty little colored map, but the last map he had up here, using the term future land use, still shows us in transitional. If the transitional goes away and the transitional doesn't appear on the future land use map ever, I'll feel better about it. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment.
David Bailey, 14946 Madison Court. A couple things that are very confusing to me about this whole rezoning. I would like for this to be an official request to the town council to provide me with what I believe would probably be public record, the landowners that have been notified, who was notified, how were they notified. The Planning Commission basically told me the other day that there was a certified letter sent to my residence on April the 28th. Received nothing, no certified letter, nothing in my mailbox from the post office stating that they had attempted to deliver a certified letter to my residence. I think I was overlooked, maybe purposefully, maybe not. I would like this to be a request that the town council provide me with the receipt showing that they tried to send me a certified letter about this. And I would also like for this to be an official request that I be given a copy of the town ordinance, zoning ordinance. I work hours that I cannot come to town hall. I'm not available to be here during normal business hours. So I would prefer that be mailed to my house. And let's do this one certified too. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you for your comments. Any other resident would like to speak? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the, if no objection, close the public hearing regarding our Chapter 58 Town Code zoning ordinance and zoning map. And now we're going to, with no objection, open the meeting for our proposed real estate property tax increase. There again, for the folks, same rules apply. If you could please just remember to address me as the chair, be respectful, and thank you.
Hi. Rebecca Bear, 14977.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry. Pardon me one moment. Oh, yes, I apologize. If you could please bear with me one moment. Yep. Yeah. Apologies. Thank you.
That's fine. We
Sure.
just wanted to give a summary of the overview of the tax increase proposed for the budget. The notice that went out in the paper in April 12th and May 3rd talked about that the total amount of the proposed real property tax increase for an amount not to exceed 4 cents per $100 of assessed value. The budget that the council has looked at and reviewed over the last several meetings, and the one that's printed on the back and one that's part of the packet includes a 2 cents increase per $100 of assessed value, but the notice had to go out for maximum amount for what they were discussing at the time during the several budget sessions.
So just to clarify
So to
for-
clarify,
yeah.
the budget before you includes a 2 cent increase on the real estate tax per 100 of assessed value.
Okay. All right.
So if we were to vote on the budget, we're not voting on a .166, we're voting on a .146.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll go back. I apologize. We did want to make sure people understood that even though what we've advertised is not what we're actually using, we advertise for a max.
I got those numbers correct before I start. We advertise not to exceed 166, but the budget is 146, correct?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. 2 cents versus 4 cents.
Hi, Rebecca Bear, 14977 Cheyenne Way. I'm here tonight to speak against the proposed tax increase, or any increase for that matter. All of the comments I made at the budget public hearing apply to this tax rate as well. Before borrowing money and raising taxes, every other avenue needs to be explored, and I do not feel it has been. Obviously, this is a consent budget. 2 members of this council are on the finance committee and have worked with staff. You yourselves, as the council as a whole, have had budget work sessions and worked with staff. With the advertised increase of not to exceed the 166 and the actual budget being prepared at 146, it does tell me from my experience up there that you guys are pretty confident in this budget. I have to go back to what I said at the meeting. There are cuts to be made. There are more financially responsible decisions that need to be made. As I said, if you, the council, had given up your budget category, that would cover the tax increase. What I really would like to recommend is that, again, stop this, start this over ASAP, make appropriate budget cuts, be financially responsible, and prepare a budget that has the town, as a resident stated at the budget hearing, living within its means. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Steve Shannon, 14983 KB Place, here in our great little town of Haymarket. A couple things. Accountable, inclusive, transparent, respectful, integrity, innovative. Gosh, to me that describes our police department here in this town. Let me just a couple things. I was here at the last meeting when I heard some talk about the budget and about the police department. Let me just give you just a few of my points here, my feelings. I'm retired from the United States Army. 37 years between the Army and law enforcement, both federal law enforcement. I am one that have seen home invasions. I have seen bodies, children, parents, grandparents, and I know what a response time consists of. Here in this town, in Prince William, the county police is a great organization. So this is not a knock on those those true warriors. Our police department can respond anywhere in the town of Haymarket within 5 minutes.
Can I stop you for a second, please, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind? Could you please, if someone is speaking, could you guys kind of refrain from speaking or head outside? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. But a 5-minute response time. Our chief and his troops, as I call them, his officers, can respond anywhere in this town within 5 minutes. It's probably going to take Prince William County at least 15 minutes. They are light in this end because of the Haymarket Police Department and because they're just short on officers in this end of the county. Again, not a knock on them, but a big kudo to our chief and his team. I don't know how many know that our officers, how much time they spend, their own time, to do things for this town, public outreach, things such as that. I look at their innovative. I'll tell you that the chief now has 2 bikes. He's got a bike patrol. And these 2 officers have reached out to many residents here, to include the children in this town who look at them. They go up and they talk to them. Where else do you want to really create a good, solid experience between law enforcement and the community? Start with their children. Let them respect what these badges mean. Looking at the budget, I see that the chief, that his budget has decreased 2.6%. That usually doesn't happen in this day and age. It's usually a big increase. So I'll just close by saying I too agree with a young lady here about looking at every avenue you can before raising taxes. But at the same time, if raising this small tax helps keep my wife, myself, my grandkids when they're here to visit, and the citizens of this town, if that's what it takes, then please do it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comment, sir.
Good evening. Chuck Carnahan, 6654 Hunting Path Road. I'll reiterate what I talked about at our budget meeting the other day. When you see a budget that relies on deferring maintenance, raising your real estate and B-poll taxes, borrowing money, selling buildings, raising inspection and service fees, no reserve funding, and optimistic revenue projections, I think we're heading down a dangerous path. It's time to go back and look. And as has been mentioned, we need to figure out what are our wants and what are our needs and what can we afford to do. It's just got to happen. I fear the next budget cycle, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're going to end this year in a deficit and you're going to have to do something more drastic then. So I think it's time to do it now. A couple areas that particularly to me is not funding a reserve. Just because your reserve has exceeded your minimum threshold doesn't mean you stop putting money away. It's just like your savings account, it's like your 401. Don't stop putting money in it. It's an investment that pays off every time. We need to continue to do that. One area, as I mentioned in your budget work session, that really bothers me is the fact that we now roll all the operating expenses of this rental property into the general fund. That needs to be pulled back out. There's no way you can make an assessment on selling one of these buildings if you have no idea whether the property is profitable or not. You may be selling off something that's profitable. Oh my God, Chuck Carnahan just said that. Do you believe it? So you need to have a clear picture. If you're thinking about selling something, you got to know what it's worth to do it. And the last subject is one that bothers me. I've talked about it with Mr. Morris privately, is these contributions, these benevolent contributions that we're making as a town to the local schools. Okay? think about it honestly. In Northern Virginia, a child enrolled in a robotics program or an archery program or band program, that's not a charity. This is Northern Virginia. Their parents made a conscious choice. They can support that. I don't think we have any business as a town being a benevolent organization granting them money like that. And I'm sorry, I come from a long line, and I counted today 14 cousins who are teachers and coaches, and my son just graduated on Saturday as a teacher from VCU. So it's a touchy subject, but we have no business doing that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your comments, sir.
Bob Weir, 6853 St. Paul Drive, Round 3. Much like the process regarding the rezonings and the text amendments, this process is flawed as well. I shouldn't have to remind the town that setting the rate and setting the budget is a two-step process. And in every jurisdiction that I've ever been involved with, and any budget that I've ever been involved with, you set the rate first, and then you adopt the budget to the rate. You don't do the budget and then have this whole card sitting there with a higher rate. You determine what your cap is prior to markup. Again, we're doing it backwards. The tax increase itself, it's required because, well, quite frankly, the town council's doubled the public safety and admin costs. Back in 2011, your total admin cost was $456,716. In FY16, it's $744,985. PD went from $547,755 to $822,349. These are from your CAFR. You can't argue these numbers. These are the published numbers your accountants put out. Town revenues, FY11, a little over $1.7 million. FY16, just barely over $2 million. Conversely, the expenditures in 2011 were almost $1.6 million, but the town ended up with a net revenue of $161,000 to the good. FY16, your expenditures were over $2.8 million. You ended up $770,000 in the hole. It's a 3-year trend. It's continuing this year. I extrapolated out the numbers. You're going to be underwater again this year. Part of the other reason the cost has grown is you have gotten rid of everybody with institutional knowledge or expertise or experience. You've replaced them with consultants and more consultants and even more consultants, and it all comes at a cost. And it's a cost that we're having to bear. You've burned up your reserves, and you've placed us in a position where you have to raise the taxes to cover things that the meals tax was specifically adopted to cover. When the meals tax was first adopted, it was adopted to cover the cost of the streetscape and then left in place to cover capital improvement and maintenance. Obviously, that hasn't worked. I'd like to know where the millions that have gone into that fund have gone or that have been accrued from that tax have gone, because it certainly hasn't kept your spending in check. The budget that the rate's going to support, quite frankly, in my view, is a travesty. It's got overestimated revenue streams. I point to the cigarette tax. I've warned you guys about regressive taxes and how they are collected over time, and quite frankly, understated expenses. But that's pretty much par for the course given what's happened in the last couple of years. On top of the tax rate, you want to raise the B-poll tax. I tell you, nothing says business friendly or, we want economic development better than saying we're going to raise the B-poll tax. I said it last month and I'll say it again. B-poll is going goodbye. The General Assembly is going to get rid of it. Prince William County raised their threshold to $500,000 so that a vast preponderance of the businesses in Prince William County don't have to pay it. Stafford County has eliminated it entirely. Many cities, towns, and counties in the Commonwealth are doing that. It's probably a good idea to consider that because at the end of the day, you're going to have to fill that revenue hole, not if, but when the General Assembly eliminates B-poll as a revenue stream for the town. Instead of increasing your revenues at the expense, this time, of the town residents, putting it on those taxpayers' backs, you really should be looking at cutting your expenses and looking for some efficiencies. If it means cutting staff, then so be it. But you have grown the administrative function of this government to the extent that it's unsustainable over the long run. And I suspect that if you don't address that matter very quickly, and by very quickly I mean this budget cycle, it's going to require yet another tax increase next year because you're going to have add-on expenses, either through additional pay for experience or raises or increases in their benefits packages. I mean, and that's just at the bare minimum, not including other types of inflation. So I would strongly suggest you take this back, and you're running out of time, but you need to rework it, and you need to rework it fast. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, sir. Anybody else would like to address?
Dottie Leonard, 14801 Washington Street. I agree with one thing said by the previous person, and only one, that it's important for us as residents to have you as our elected officials making decisions for us. I would prefer not having staff making all of our major decisions. We elected you, we trust you, and sometimes recommendations from staff, which I have said in the past, cost us more money. I still believe that we can get by with one part-time planner. We have never, ever, in the 45 years I've lived here and the 20 plus I've been involved in the town government, never had a full-time planner. We have a very professional, highly degreed town manager who has a lot of the same skills in her economic development skills that you would expect from a planner. I think a part-time planner using some of the staff that are assistants to the town, I believe they call themselves assistants, they're very competent. They could do some of the organizing and putting plans into portals so that they're all organized for the planner, and the planner is someone you're paying a lot more money to per hour. Don't waste that planner's time to do trivial things and get by on less hours. And I also think that the budget needs to take in, the decisions about the budget need to take into consideration that town property values are going up automatically. You're not reflecting what those values are right now, but January 1 of next year, everybody's taxes are going to go up based on the sales that have happened this year. And most of you are aware, and as a realtor, I'm certainly aware, there's been a vast increase in sales values in our town. So come April, you'll be paying taxes, you'll be sending out tax bills in the town based on property values experienced and announced right after January 1 that reflect what properties sold for throughout 2017. So you will be getting an automatic increase. And what I'm hearing the property owners say is that they're feeling their property values go up, so that's a blessing since they all lost property values. But that means their taxes go up in the county, and they're going to go up here. And if we raise the rate at the same time, that's going to be a major ouch. And it's going to come out just before the next election. I want you to stay. So I want to repeat that again. I don't want taxpayers to be mad at you and want you to go away, because I'm grateful for the police department. I'm grateful that I feel safe in this town. I know they're Johnny on the spot if I need them. They've always been there. They even relieved me from a skunk family that got on my porch on New Year's Eve. Who does that? I was scared to death. I thought, they shut the door on themselves, and I didn't know how to get rid of them. The town policemen were up setting up roadblocks on New Year's Eve, and they came and rescued me and let the skunks out safely so nobody got hurt. I won't forget it. That was amazing, and for them to do it on New Year's Eve. And they're there for everything for all of us, and I'm grateful, and they're worth their money. I will say that the years, and Mr. Weir is aware too, as part of a previous administration, he's aware that the years that we buy police cars, it appears that the police budget is a lot higher than it normally would be. We have to pay for those cars, and then we have other years that we're not paying for them, and the budget goes down. So I would ask you to please consider finishing this facade out here, finishing the park, reducing the hours of the planner, try to utilize more of the assistants in the office to assist the planner, and not do the extra brick sidewalks this year. It's just not necessary. They weren't originally planned to go down the Jefferson Street. If sometime we get rich, go ahead and do it. I don't care if you put brick sidewalks in every street in town, but it doesn't need to be done this year. So I trust you to make the right decision. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else who would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close our, if no objection, close our public hearing regarding our proposed real estate property tax increase. Our first item up on our agenda is, we can go to page actually 2 of our packet here, our ordinance, Chapter 58 of the Town Code, zoning ordinance and zoning map. So we've heard from a lot of people. I think we've heard most importantly from Darren to give us the history and the proper history of this, that as the town went down this road of looking at the zoning ordinance and how these things took place almost 2 years ago. I know, listening to the Planning Commission liaison, this has been kicked around a lot. So with that, I open for comments from our dais here.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yes.
And thank you, the residents, for the comments that you've made. I really feel that we do need to hear from the Planning Commission directly on the proposed. We're looking at the zoning ordinance and zoning map.
Right, this was forwarded to us with the recommendation.
Yes, and that's a recommendation.
Right.
But I still think that we need that from the Planning Commission or their rep to give us that presentation, maybe even on the comments that we've heard this evening and the previous meetings.
Okay.
I think we owe it to the residents to make sure that every T is crossed and I's are dotted. And if there are concerns, it's not like we're acting on everything that has been mentioned, but that we make sure in doing due diligence in making sure that the points, the sensible points that are made are addressed. And just to hear it from the Planning Commission itself.
So you want a joint public hearing? Is that what you're asking, or a joint?
Or even just the Planning Commission, their representative, just sharing with us before we vote on this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Other comments or questions? Sure.
There's no time reason we would have to vote on this tonight.
No.
No, then I'm with Councilman Morris that I think Councilman Leak could give us a little presentation, and we can ask him some questions and find out what's behind the Planning Commission's decision and recommendation.
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Edwards. And just to clarify too, this isn't something that you want to ask staff that actually has been part of this process?
Yeah, I'll put it together and send it to the staff. I'm not prepared to vote tonight.
Okay, all right. Councilwoman Edwards.
I'm not prepared to vote tonight either.
Okay. Any other additional comments or concerns?
For me?
Yes. We're on you now.
I had a problem voting the last time,
Yeah.
so I'm just not going to vote tonight.
Okay.
If I vote, I'm going to vote. I just have too many questions.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out as well. I really appreciate the comments, and you've been heard, both last council meeting and tonight. I agree. I think it would be prudent to go back and review some of the comments, or most of the comments that were made this evening. I'm concerned about the procedural issues that were raised. I'm sure we followed procedure. I have every confidence in staff that they followed procedure, but I would like to hear from our attorney and also from our Planning Commission liaison as well in regards to that. I've read the zoning ordinance, and I'm not an expert. I happen to like the fact that it's streamlined. It has performance measures. But I agree. I think we should have a little bit more of a discussion. Let's go through some of the comments that were made tonight and better understand where this is, how it fits. But I do have some specific questions, if I may ask staff while we're sitting here.
If you think it's prudent in the open forum like this, yeah.
Sure. So the Planning Commission met and they had a public hearing, correct?
We've had two.
They've had two. Okay.
This will be our second one.
So relative to the input that we got from the Planning Commission, were there any concerns in the public hearings that were not addressed or not applicable? I'm just trying to get a sense of how did we respond to those issues that were raised at that public hearing. Now, I know the Planning Commission is making recommendations to us that they're satisfied with it, but I would like to hear if in fact we've addressed all of those concerns at that public hearing as well.
So the ordinance that's before you this evening, there was a joint work session that Council and the Planning Commission had on April 5th. And there have been no material changes, to my knowledge, to the zoning ordinance text since that meeting.
But with respect to...
The Planning Commission had their first public hearing, and there were no concerns expressed by them at that public hearing. They recommended approval as presented to Council. And then when we were in the process of preparing the legal notice for the council meeting, we ran it by the town attorney's office, and the town attorney said there needs to be more of a thorough description of everything that has changed. And he provided an example of another community that had done a similar exercise, the same exercise. And so I rewrote the legal ad, and staff reviewed it, the town attorney's office reviewed it, and the Planning Commission public hearing was redone per that ad, which is the same basic ad that we used for this public hearing as well. So it's detailed in description, but it certainly does not include every single thing that was changed in the ordinance. Marked up version of the ordinance and a clean version of the ordinance, to my knowledge, have been on the town's website for a while. They've certainly been available to the public for a while. At the last Planning Commission public hearing, I was not here, but that's when the zoning map came up. That's when that was included as part of the ad, and that's what the preponderance of conversation was about. And that's all I can say. And maybe Ms. Murray can fill in any blanks from the last Planning Commission public hearing.
Let's take out some of that misinformation that's out there, Ms. Murray, if you could, and specifically some of the comments that were made at the last meeting. About the notice, I think if you want to address that.
Yes, sir. Several of the comments that we received at the public hearing for the Planning Commission last week were around procedural issues and notification. We did send out 33 certified letters that were mailed on April 28th.
33?
33
Right.
certified letters that were mailed out on April 28th. To the folks that were being impacted by the ordinance change on their properties or were adjacent or across the street. And it did include Mr. Bailey and Ms. Childress, as well as, let's see, Bill Rafferty as well. They were all here providing comment. So we did verify after the meeting that notices were sent. Ms. Leonard had some questions when she was at the public hearing, and her property is not directly impacted by the rezoning. The other properties that were affected, which was why she did not receive a letter.
So she's not an adjacent property owner?
That's
According to
correct.
the, I guess, the legal standard
Yeah,
or
according to the changes, yes.
the state statute.
And we'll speak with Mr. Bailey directly after the meeting, but we do have his notice, the receipt that we sent the letter to him. We'll get him a copy and speak with him afterwards as well. And so those were some of the comments we received around noticing, around specific properties that were noticed. And then there were some additional comments. I believe you heard the same comments tonight, a lot of the same comments that the Planning Commission heard. I don't believe that there were additional comments that you did not hear tonight that weren't given at the meeting last week. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir, if I may. Yes, and that's good that we had those comments at the PC.
Yes, sir.
But do we have a record of these comments or questions and the answers that were given to the residents? Because, and we're going to head into the same direction with the budget, because there are comments / accusations / misinformation that has been addressed or spoken during these meetings. And I would feel comfortable addressing them and calling lies, lies, and good information, good information. So in the same way, same direction that we're going with the budget, in looking at the comments and the questions, in pointing out which ones are really true. I'll tell you, I've been having, there was one comment that was mentioned last time that we met concerning the attorney fees. And it has been one of my main concerns being here, but I know that it's on the decrease. And I know it for the last 2 years. I would like to bring it whenever it's time to look at the budget, to bring it in the open and share with our residents, hey, the track record of it. So that's just one example. But do we have a record of the questions or comments that were made at the PC and the subsequent answers that we provided to the residents?
The Planning Commission did not make a decision at that public hearing to create answers and get back to the residents. As staff, we did, Alice did help me draft some of the comments and then address some of the answers that we had written out, but we did not provide them directly to the residents. We can do that. We had one resident come in today, and I did try to explain it to her when she did come in. And the others were addressing Mr. Bailey's. Tonight, we gave him a copy of the zoning ordinance already, and we're happy to go over any of the changes that he has questions about. Ms. Dottie Leonard was seen by Ms. Danielle Kievsky on Friday, and they sat down together to discuss some of her questions that have been going around about the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. So, one by one, staff is addressing them on their own, because we feel that's an important thing to do.
Is there a record of this, of each item that has been addressed?
Well, we're just recording it. Our own staff knows. Is
Yeah,
that
but
what you mean, sir, or you mean officially?
To the individuals, as individuals reach out to us, there is a record.
Well,
She has
some of it
been
is
staff
Right.
some of it is sitting down and talking with them. Is that what you mean, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
I just wanted to know if there's any written thing, because I'd like to see them.
Yeah, Alice had summarized some of the comments that I shared with the planning commissioners. I emailed this out to them earlier today.
Okay. I'm just, if you can send it out to the.
So
gonna
from
say,
the,
could you-
I will say, Mr. Weir's comments, some of them from the planning commission meeting were difficult to hear. Some of the state statute that he was quoting, so we were having difficulty hearing exactly. So I'm very pleased to hear that he specifically wrote down. And tonight, I did hear much more clearly, being at the meeting, some of the code references that he was seeing. So we'll look into his comments.
Good. That's good.
I just want to say that my hesitation is being out in the community recently. I have had residents approach me, and they have questions, and it's a little troubling that they don't come to the meetings, but at the same time, I'm elected by these people, and I want to make sure that I give due diligence to their concerns and do a little bit more investigating, and I don't want to be hasty in any of my voting. So it's not any, I don't want any of the staff to take offense, not that I'm worried about offending you, but haven't been worried in the past. So But I want to know that we appreciate your hard work, and it's not saying that, we're not moving in the right direction, but I just want to make sure that we give this the attention that it deserves. And the comments that have been made to me, I want to make sure, and it was I saw some residents here that I haven't seen before come, and I'm a little, I don't know why they didn't speak. Like, they were here, you obviously came to hear what was going on, but I know they're concerned, but it concerns me that they didn't speak.
Well,
So,
if you could give me some contact info, I'm happy to reach out to anybody.
Okay.
And sit down and go over any questions that they have.
okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
I just want to add to Ms. Edwards' point. We're heading in the right direction. This is the direction that we want to go into, and this is the direction we're heading into. So,
Vice Mayor, you had looked like squiggling in your chair there.
That's okay. All right, so a couple of questions about the comprehensive plan, because I think we heard tonight that, I think you said, Darren, the zoning ordinance can leap ahead, essentially. I mean, the comprehensive plan is your roadmap, your guide, so to speak. So, I mean, it doesn't possess the force of law, does it, the comprehensive plan?
No, it does not. It's a guide. But if you're in court, you need to be able to tie your decisions as closely to the comprehensive plan as you can.
Right.
But it is not law. And that's the main reason why, in my opinion, the town decided to amend its zoning and subdivision regulations first. Those are law. And they are barriers to economic development. They're barriers to good planning. They're barriers to an efficient, effective planning process. And it's something that council and planning commission and staff very much wanted to see improved.
Right.
And so we did that. And once we've finished doing that, then I would recommend that, as time and money permit, you look at updating your comprehensive plan, which is another thorough, year-long, if you're going to do it right, process.
Well,
And we did amend it. You remember in January of 2016, we all sat up here, and it was a unanimous vote to amend it for 4 parcels. Actually, it was 5. It was a 5 or 6. We went from St. Paul all the way to Madison. It wasn't just looking at 1 or 2 parcels or 3. It was all 5 of the parcels we looked at. And the vote went around unanimous to go ahead and change that to a TC.
okay. I mean, I just wanted to clarify that for the public, that, we're not doing it backwards necessarily. We're doing.
It's not uncommon.
Right. And is that considered a best practice?
Best practice is you revise your comprehensive plan, you keep it up to date, and you revise your ordinances and you keep them up to date. But in search of the perfect, nothing gets done. And so what you're doing is very common. There are a lot of communities, a lot of our clients that go, we got to fix what's truly broke, and then we'll worry about the vision and the plan and the goals later. That's important, but we got to fix the law first, and then we'll do the other thing. And it's not uncommon.
Okay.
Is it perfect? Is it best practice? No. Best practice is you update your comp plan, but that's just not feasible sometimes.
That's essentially.
There's only
Yeah.
so much money to go around, right? You got to make priorities. And so what do you fix first? And it's a hard decision, but the decision 2 years ago was we need to fix our regulatory tools first, and then the comp plan is on the radar. It's been evaluated. That evaluation is still current. What was out of date, still out of date, plus 2 years.
Right. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. If no further discussion on that, we'll move over to our next item. Discussion on our 2017-2018 town budget.
We're going to vote on this one.
When are we looking to vote?
We had it penciled in for the June 5th meeting,
Right.
regular meeting of the council.
Okay.
And that's up to you folks, that's
But
when
the
we had
drop
it
dead
scheduled.
date it has to be.
Well, the
July.
drop, yes, the drop
Okay,
dead
I-
date is
I
the end of
just-
June, but we don't want to wait that long.
No, I know, but Just in my
For June
brain,
5th.
I'm
Yes, ma'am.
processing all this.
So I'm hearing that we maybe want to have one more meeting between now and June 5th?
Well, we were going to talk about it
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up to you folks, but that's what we had
Well,
originally scheduled.
Yeah, well, we're missing 2 council members.
Yep.
I think it's important that they be part of the discussion. I have some concerns myself about the budget, and I haven't hidden any of that, and I made those comments at the last meeting. I think, I agree, we can find efficiencies. There are a couple areas, and I appreciate some of the comments that were made about the police department this evening. I wholeheartedly agree. I have a family full of law enforcement officers, and particularly one very close to me. And I think our police department does a good job, an excellent job, and I will reiterate what I heard this evening, that I think they're doing a fantastic job. But that doesn't mean we can't eke out more efficiencies. For example, when we had the discussion over the police vehicles, and I'll raise that again, and to some consternation, I guess, I still feel that we might have gotten too many vehicles. I can figure out a way, I think, and I would make a recommendation, we look at that again. We first look at the service level, then we look at the need. Now, is this a nice to have or a need to have? What's our service level? We also have to talk about the take-home policy. I think that's critical because that has an impact on the budget as well and on the number of vehicles in the fleet. So we've got some great vehicles. I love the concept, the lease concept, lease to buy. I think it was a great idea. But do we need that many vehicles? We're talking about 5 brand-new vehicles plus 2 more, totaling 7, I think, if I got the number right, 7 for 7 officers, 6 officers and a part-timer. So I think, that's just one area where I think we need to kind of investigate a little bit better. And I think there we can save, if we cut 2 vehicles from the budget, we could probably save somewhere in the area of 15,000 to maybe 20,000 based on depreciation, wear and tear, and the cost of fuels, not also including the lease itself. So that's just one area. The other areas I think we need to talk about are the Harrover property. And I made the argument that we needed to have money in there for that. I know that. But I'm wondering, what is the right number? Maybe we can do some kind of a reduction on that, depending on what our plan's going to be, because I'm not sure what the plan is and how we're going to go forward. So we look at that. We look at perhaps at the health issues, the health care. Maybe we can eke out some savings there as well. So there's a number of places I think we can look at, and I would recommend that we do that over the next week or two before we have our next council meeting.
Other comments or questions from this side?
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Should we set a date?
Yeah, we need to. Another meeting between now and June 5th. It's the 15th.
Well, we have next Monday's the 22nd, and then it's up to you and your schedules. And did you want to schedule that joint meeting with the Planning Commission on a separate night too? And or those want to be separate meetings?
No, I'd be comfortable discussing it at the next council meeting.
The zoning and the map?
Yeah.
So we're going to put that as an agenda item, an action item,
At June's meeting?
Yeah.
as an agenda action item.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Is that
Right.
the consensus?
So that would be for the PC.
Discussion or action? He
Well,
said
Well, I'm
action.
saying an agenda item
I'd
as,
say discussion, and then we can vote.
okay, all right.
Okay, and you don't want it to be a joint meeting because I know
No,
a couple
just-
of members
I think
discussed.
Councilman Leak can represent the planning commission.
Okay, all right. In the meantime, we'll look at the comments that we received.
And if we have
What we heard
questions, we
tonight.
can forward them
Please.
to you? Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Okay.
Now we just need a meeting.
I had one more comment. Just
What?
in my head, but we'll wait for the next meeting.
Okay. Just need a meeting.
For the 22nd, do we think we can get it done in one meeting?
And this is a work
Right.
session. I mean,
Work
this is-
session?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you can get it done in,
yeah. Can we do it at 6 o'clock again?
Yep.
it's fine with me.
22nd, 6 o'clock?
22nd, so that'll be this coming Monday. And here's what I'm going to ask the council to do. I would like for us to send our information to everyone that way we're better prepared for the meeting. What are your ideas? It sounds great but let's get specifically, what is your line item and
Okay, so
concern?
this is, we're talking just budget on the 22nd?
Correct.
No planning, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Absolutely.
Okay. What about,
And-
everything work for staff?
That, I can't turn.
Oh.
Just sit behind me.
Yeah. Tell them to sit beside you.
22nd is Monday.
Yeah.
Does that work over
Any other conflict with any other committees? When does ARB meet?
We meet this Wednesday,
Okay.
ARB does.
That's the last one.
We already have. Stop it. He's joking.
Okay? Do we have a conflict?
We're just got to figure out some logistics.
Okay. Is there a
Do we
time,
wanna-
is there a time that would be better to make that work better for staff?
Yeah, you can do it Tuesday.
For that dude over there.
Mondays are good.
I have two more areas I just thought of when I was talking. I'd like to get it out in the public.
Thoughts?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the record.
Are we,
Okay.
We're good.
Okay.
for
Figure
6
it out.
o'clock?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Are you sure?
6 PM Monday.
Because Tuesday's not better.
No, it's not better.
It's not better.
Okay.
For-
All right.
Now, if we don't have if all the counselors can't make it, if Steve or Connor have a conflict, we're going to keep moving forward?
think they
Yes.
have to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
They
Yep.
can
I'll be
just
right in
send
touch
in
with
there.
them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 p.m.?
6 PM.
Yep.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I had a couple of things that I neglected to mention while I was discussing the budget. You know, this idea of reducing our salaries or eliminating it, it's been done before. I don't know why it hasn't been done here before, but it's been done before. Well, actually, it has been done here before. It was done for 2.5 years by a council member sitting at this dais. And so I don't think it couldn't be done again. I'd be more than happy to forego. And I'm not putting my council members on the spot because they work hard and they deserve their stipend. The mayor deserves a stipend. But I would be more than happy to forego my stipend if that would help the budget. So I wanted to put that out there publicly. I have no problem with that. The other thing is, when we talk about the master plan here, and we're setting aside the $45,000 for the interest payments, I guess, I think we ought to look at that as well. Given the fact that you're reviewing the master plan now, and some of the numbers may be higher than expected.
For the town center.
For the town center.
Town center plan, sir.
Yeah, town center master plan. Okay, town center plan. I think, you know, that might be an area we may have some discussion about as well. Given some of the recommendations that maybe we should look at this in a different way. I'm not sure where we're going to be able to come up with the money if it is a lot higher than what we've projected. So there may be an opportunity there to kind of cut that out of the budget for the time being, unless you're comfortable with it still being in there, if we think we're going to move forward with the funding next year, next fiscal year. Not saying that I want to go back to the reserve, but maybe that's what that reserve is for capital investments. One-time payments, maybe just for the 1 year, we can cut that this year and bring it back in the subsequent years. So just a thought. I'm not a financial expert, as I've been told, but I'm just trying to think it through a little bit and come up with some ways where we can cut this budget.
Just make sure I understand what you said there. So for I think it's almost $50,000 that we were planning on building that building right there.
Right.
That you would take that out of our reserve for this coming one, and then take that way, essentially it would be
Right.
reducing about $50,000.
45, whatever the number is. Yeah, I think it's 45. Yeah, that's actually what I'm suggesting that we take a look at. I mean, is it prudent? Is it
It's not prudent to overcharge or charge our taxpayers either, you know. I don't think it's part of government to build up a nest egg. Of,
Exactly.
For no purpose in mind,
Right.
you know.
So, that might be an avenue where we can investigate cutting as well.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Over here.
Appreciate your time.
Anything?
Just one for the record concerning
Sure.
what Joe just said is, were these things discussed in the Finance Committee?
Well, I have to admit that I wasn't at a number of them for various reasons, but suggestions were made, and I'll just leave it at that until we have our discussion on Monday night. I've made some of these suggestions, yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Any other closing comments or thoughts? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you all for your time.